All right, so a couple questions to wrap today's show. Actually, one question and one Spencer scale of agreement. I like both of those things. This from a Locked On Ducks insider. So I was thinking to myself and figure I would ask the question, which coach in all likelihood will be the next to leave for another opportunity? As much as I don't want it, I can't fault someone for betting on themselves, for bettering themselves. Chris Hampton is the answer to this question. So Hampton was a full-time defensive coordinator at Tulane, came to Oregon ahead of the 2023 season. Defense improved immediately once he got there. Then in 2024, he pulls the greatest defensive back haul, well, in 25, he pulls the greatest defensive back haul of recruits in the history of Oregon football, gets the 24/7 Recruiter of the Year moniker, deservedly so. He's Oregon's co-defensive coordinator. He was the secondary coach. It's back to safeties. They're all just shifting titles around. They're all heavily involved. Okay, a former defensive coordinator who is now a co-DC with a recruiting profile like Hampton's, he's not going to last very long. I will be so incredibly, but pleasantly surprised if Chris Hampton remains a member of the coaching staff for the 2026 season. Someone somewhere is going to come and scoop him up to be their full-time defensive coordinator. Because right now, he is one of the highest-ranking coaches on Oregon staff. He does not, however, call the defensive plays. If he wants to be a head coach one day, he probably has to call defensive plays at the Power 4 level and do so successfully, which I believe he can. So that's if. I haven't talked to him, of course, but if that is what he ultimately wants to do, which plenty of coaches, when you are willing to take a step up in pedigree of the school from Tulane to Oregon, but take a step down in your role, there are a lot of similarities between coaching and broadcasting. I'm very familiar with both of these worlds. That's typically a sign you will do whatever it takes to continue ascending upward. So Hampton's a stud. He's got an impressive track record. It's only going to continue to get stronger, it seems. And that is who I think is the least likely assistant to be on Dan Lanning's staff next year. Now, Will Stein would be pretty high on that list too. The difference, though, is I think Hampton will have more jobs he's willing to take than Will Stein. Because if Stein, who I do think wants to be a head coach one day, gets an opportunity to do so, he will. His name has popped up on lists before, and I don't think there's been anything serious, at least not that I've seen or been told, but he's going to continue to get more buzz, and a lot of time coaches wind up on those lists because agents make that happen, or because they want it to happen, or because a guy is just really good and high profile, and back-to-back Heisman Trophy finalist at quarterback. It's pretty high profile. It's pretty high profile when you're doing that at Oregon, of course, doing in the Pac-12, then in the Big Ten. So I think that Stein is certainly a candidate to leave Oregon within the next year or two, but he's looking for the right opportunity. I don't think he's just going to take first available, because being Oregon's OC, boy, that carries with it a lot of cachet. And you know what? Not everyone that's moved on to be a head coach from that position has taken a job that's worked out. Marcus Arroyo, who is now Arizona State's offensive coordinator, they really like him down there with Dillingham. I think that's more about Dillingham than Arroyo, personally, who I have heard is a really good guy, but we all saw him as an OC. I wasn't sad when he left. I like Joe Moorhead a lot better. I'll get to him in a sec. Arroyo went to be the head coach at UNLV. It did not work out. Joe Moorhead went to be the head coach at Akron. It is not working out. Them's the breaks sometimes. And you can get those sorts of jobs, or you wait for the right job to come open. I have mentioned this before. If I'm Will Stein, I'm keeping an eye on what happens at Stanford, because that is a place where, this may surprise you, you can recruit high school kids at a top 25 level. That has always been true, because Stanford is unique. Can you do a top 10? No. But can you do top 25? Yes. Can you be a darn good program? Yes, I do believe that, even in the modern era. There are obstacles, to be sure. Do you know how many transfers Stanford has taken in the 2025 class? I'm going to double check this answer. I believe it's 18. That is more transfers than their football program has taken in the history. It is 18. That's more than they've taken in the history of their program combined. Their GM is Andrew Luck. He's pretty good. If you put Andrew Luck's brain and Will Stein's offense together, boy, what quarterback wouldn't want to go play for those guys, quite frankly? And if Stanford starts using the portal, they've got an endowment as large as anybody in the country, or larger than most schools in the country. And if they direct just a smidge, like a rounding error, of that money towards the football program, which I'm sure Andrew Luck will encourage them to do, then guess what? Kind of an attractive job. Kind of. I'm not saying it's a top 5 job in college football. I'm saying over the last 3 years, it's been a job I would not want no part of if I wanted to be a head coach. Andrew Luck is trying to change that, and I respect him for doing so. That's a job I'd keep an eye on if I were Will Stein. But when you're looking for a defensive coordinator job like Chris Hampton will, you just got to take first available. You get a Power 4 defensive coordinator offer, go. Go. Prove your worth. Show that you can do it at the Power 4 ranks. But when you're looking to be a head coach, especially when it's your first head coaching job, you can't always be super picky, but you should be at least a little bit more picky. So that's why I'd say Hampton leaves before Stein. Wrapping this up with a Spencer scale of agreement take from Ian. You were talking about the wide receiver room, and it got me thinking. 2013 was the most underrated wide receiver room the Ducks have had in the past 20 years. Josh Huff, Keenan Lowe, Braylon Addison, Braylon Addison, and Darren Carrington was so underrated. Well, the most underrated, at full strength, the 2014 unit was pretty solid. Darren Carrington, Devin Allen, also Keenan Lowe, I believe, was still on that 2014 team. That was a real solid group. But 13 did have Addison and Huff. And I tell you what, I hope every Oregon receiver turns into Braylon Addison or Josh Huff. Not a bad comp for Jalen Lott, tying this back to the beginning of the show. Huff was not a guy that hit you with a bunch of slants. I know his most iconic catch was on a mid-range slot, but he was a lot of downfield and a lot of around the line of scrimmage and a little bit of a gadget guy. I think Josh Huff was a little bit thicker coming out of high school, or at least by the time he, really built his body out. 5'10", 185. A couple inches shorter, actually, than Jalen Lott. And Lott is 6 foot, 175. So, not exactly identical, but kind of similar-ish. 2013 is the most under... I mean, the last few years have just been so good. I think a lot of those can blend together. I like that take, Ian. 7. I give that a 7. I'm a Braylon Addison, Josh Huff stan. That's just the way I roll. So with those glorious names, I'm wrapping today's show. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.